Okay, welcome everyone to the September 11, 2024 Flux Dev Meeting.
I want to say some things about the release. So we got more things in. We still need to wrap up the Azure OEDC things and finalize the proxy support for OCI. I have opened the pull request to use the new client that Matthias with the proxy option that Mateus added in source control, and I see you've updated in image reflector. So I would really like to get this done today. Merge this. Another thing is that we have a new controller gen version that changes a little bit the structure of the generated CRDs. I've updated it in source controller, but this needs to happen everywhere. So yeah, I'll do this update in all controllers this week or early next week. Let's move forward with the agenda now.
And there's also the Microsoft Teams change, right?
Oh yeah, that one too. I've seen in the end you went with the URL lookup. Yeah,
Yep.
I proposed that at the beginning, but then I don't know, Kingdom or I don't know who say like, oh, we can't figure out the differences. But now it's obvious that the difference between which API to use can be based on the URL prefix. So we
Yeah, the patterns are very different. And also like one important thing for this decision, I think, is that we only really tested adaptive card for MS Teams, right? We didn't test it for anything else. So like Sunny said, we can't like have this adaptive card provider that we suppose integrates with any services from Microsoft that accept an adaptive card payload. It's safer to merge this into MS Teams because we know MS Teams accept it, but we haven't tested this with anything else.
yeah, okay. Going to approve that pull request. The docs looks okay. What we have to do as a follow-up to this pull request is we need to document in the notification control changelog how people can migrate their other provider, right? What they have to generate I don't know, how is it called? Adaptive card connector or whatever it is.
It's also called incoming webhook, but through workflows. So it's annoying that part of the name is the same. It's still incoming webhook, but incoming webhook with workflows rather than incoming webhook with Office 365 connector.
Yeah. So we have to warn people, hey, your current configuration will stop working. And this is what you need to do. Configure the incoming webhook with the workflow and link to the whatever documentation is there. I've seen, we have the link in the docs already, right? So
Right.
all we need to make sure is that write one phrase about this in the changelog So people can update the secret basically, right? They don't have to change anything in the provider custom resource, but they need to update the secret, put the new URL in there for this to keep working on after starting with next month.
Is this changelog a file in the repo? Do we need to open a pull request for adding that line?
Yes, of course.
Cool. I can do that.
I was thinking of asking the people to try this because you provided what's that called? A dev build for people to test, right? So why not provide them another dev build with this solution? Because I'm not sure if the Office 365 URL is unique. There may be some variations on that we are not aware of. Maybe public cloud and private cloud may have different variants. Should we ask users to just try it or check what URLs they have today if that matches with the pattern we are using to detect the old Office 365 webhook? Yes?
Yeah, we can ask what if no one answers.
All answers will go up ahead, but let them know. Create an opportunity to comment about this. Because after release, we cannot do anything. At least we had given some option, some time.
But
And
I
maybe
don't.
also, hmm? Hmm?
But I don't understand how would they? So are you suggesting like a preview release like we did
Ah,
before?
huh?
So they tested as well. I mean, yeah. Yeah,
But
we
what
can do
we want to
that.
test is with the current Office 365 URL, does it continue to work properly or not?
Oh, right.
Just to make sure our pattern matching is proper for every use case.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can still like maybe I could test it myself, but I think I didn't see the old incoming webhook option in MS Teams.
I think they have
I'm not.
disabled that for the new users. This is for
So,
existing users.
right. So it's already not possible to create the deprecated one anymore, right?
Mhm.
No, but if you search on the internet for the webhook.office.com, you will see all the example in the Microsoft Docs. And I can't figure out from their docs if there is an alternative to this URL, if people can change it. But how would they? This is
No, it's not like they will change it. There are different offerings, right? Public cloud, gov cloud, different cloud. It's possible that the domain, we are trying to match based on the domain suffix. Domain suffix may be a bit different for US gov maybe. Does it
US
not?
we can
government?
search, right?
Maybe the docs just talk about public cloud usage, but as a government cloud user, when you create it, maybe domain is a different domain. Maybe it's not office.com, office.cn, or office.something else.
Mm.
Or maybe office.ms.com or something. I don't know. It could be anything. It's just that we cannot just assume it. We are not even using it.
Yeah, like I mean, I think for the most part it would probably be the same, but the top level domain is something I wouldn't be surprised if it was different for different countries. But yeah, I don't know.
Just let's just ask them. If nobody responds, we'll go ahead. If there is anything, to fix it.
Do you mean so just in the issue in GitHub we just
Leave
ask?
leave a comment in the issue, and also update the pull request description detailing what's actually happening, because it's just in my comment, not in the description. So people who don't know may not understand what's happening.
Do you mean like just put the new behavior in the description of the pull request?
And then leave a
A
comment
comment in
in
the
the
in the
issue
issue.
saying, asking people, this is what we are doing based on the URL pattern. We are doing this behavior, like
Should this
keeping the
work
old
for
behavior.
everybody? Like, is everybody's URL like
Right.
this, right?
They can
Cool.
at least check their URL. That's like, they don't even have to test it. They just check their URL over.
Yeah,
Take less than 5 minutes.
yeah. Cool. I can do this right now.
Yeah, so I'm reading the docs on US.gov and looks like the subdomain changes that so it's something different .webhook.office.com in front. So it's a
So the suffix still is the same.
this is what I see in some bug report somewhere, an example. But yeah, let's ask. We don't know for sure. This is the only thing I could find, but there is no public forum for ES.gov instances. Those are accessible only to clients, so we don't know for sure.
Cool.
Next.
I'm just checking if the docs update. Do we have any warning or not? Do we have a warning? Oh, right. Warning for Office 365 application. It says if the address host contains the suffix, the container will imply. I think let's add a warning, the bold warning colon word paragraph to just highlight that part. It is?
Yeah, we can.
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
In
Sorry.
the paragraph in MS Teams docs, our docs, you have added if the address host contains the suffix webbook.office.com. Let's add a warning at the beginning of that paragraph, warning with bold format, so that it's visible easily.
So in the if, right? Like a paragraph starts with if something, right? You mean like right before the if?
I think I shared a link with you from source controller docs, how we add warnings for the application.
Cool. So, but you're just checking that if you're not saying to add more content in, it's just
No, nothing,
adding warning at the
just the
beginning of this
warning.
specific paragraph, right?
Right.
Okay. Cool. Will do.
I'll go to the code. I have not gone through it to see if there may be some more comments. What's next? Git, or is there anything other than Git? Just the
I
Git
was
proxy.
thinking about how to add a test for because we merged the pull request without adding tests, right?
Hmm.
The proxy for OCI auth. And you suggested adding the test in the image reflector controller tests.
Integration tests, because
Yeah.
there are certain things that are hard to mock or fake anything. It would be better to have it in the integration test, but how do we verify things? See, you may run a pod, the proxy pod, and you run the authentication through the proxy. If it succeeds, is that enough? Should we have a way to check the logs or something?
In some tests, in some proxy tests, I just tested the errors, the different errors, if the proxy is correct or incorrect. So I don't test the actual functionality end to end, just the different errors that happen depending on am I using but in this case I'm not sure because it was like if I use the correct proxy URL, there's an error. For example, I think it was in the OCI repository change that the error was something like there's no tag for this image tag doesn't exist or something like that or empty list or something like that, and the error when the proxy URL is incorrect is connection refused, right? Because this way I'm checking that the connection is passing through the proxy when the URL is correct and getting some error, right? Like from what I'm actually trying to do. And if the port, like I'm always using the proxy port +1, right? To be sure that it's not open. And then when that is the URL used, it's always connection refused.
What I noticed in this case is there are like two separate requests. One is to get the initial token. What is it called? Some general token, and then there's a token exchange. We cannot test both of them, right? If you set the proxy, the first connection will fail. We'll never be able to test the second one, which is an entirely different client.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do about that? Because of which I thought maybe testing it in a real environment would be ideal.
Good question.
But maybe that's enough. Like you deploy it with a proxy, set the proxy configuration. If the authentication works, we say it's working.
So you mean manual tests?
No. In the integration tests, where
Oh.
we create an actual cluster, deploy a pod with proxy
Mhm.
and create or configure your application to use as proxy. If your application succeeds, we assume the proxy worked. We don't have a way to get the logs of the proxy pod and verify. I think that would be really difficult to do. If you're configuring
Yeah.
proxy, if it succeeds, we say it's working. I think it's better than nothing.
Right.
We can verify manually that the proxy logs have those things. It's less likely it will break any day. But the downside is if it breaks, we'll not know because we're not asserting anything. We're just seeing if it succeeds, then we say it's working.
Yeah, so we could do that in integration, GCP, in image reflector controller, right?
Everywhere for CI and even for Git as well. There'll be a generic thing for wherever we use proxy. I think you use Go proxy for testing, right? At least
Mhm.
even in the cluster.
I don't remember deploying a proxy as a pod inside the cluster in any test I did. How would it be
I
just
I asked Dipti. She said she asked you
oh right, but that was a manual test.
a manual test. So,
Yeah.
but you did deploy it in a pod, right?
Yeah, like I wrote a simple main in Go using Go proxy, enabling verbose logging, built an image, and yeah, and deployed the image
You can do
in
that.
kind manually.
If there's no official Go proxy container image, I think we can do this easily.
So, but like we wouldn't be building this image every time the test runs, right? We're gonna build something like this like helper image
We
that we
can.
use every time, or what?
Either we can do it, we can build it every time, or we can have a fixed image. So when we, for integration tests, we already build an app image, which
Every
is not
time?
full Flux every time because it
Mm,
has code that you're testing.
mm, mm.
It has to be built every time.
But in this specific case, it doesn't need, right, to be
It
built
doesn't
every
need to
time.
be.
Yeah, because it's just using Go proxy as a library.
Yeah, no, we should build it every time. I don't want to have some image that goes stale for years. It is not that expensive in CI to do a Docker build, right?
Cool. You can do that.
I think it will be a really small image, it doesn't even matter much. It'll be few megabytes. It's fine if you build it.
But if I understand correctly, this part of this actually, are we like? Do you guys have any pointers of like for me to look at these integration tests? Is it just like
I can show you that
yeah,
we have all the documentation how do you set up
or-
against your own cloud provider account.
because we are not talking about writing code in underscore test.go files to like render a main.go, build it in the Docker file. We're not talking about that, right? Like where you don't do it in make file or something outside, I
You
guess.
can. So have you seen in package repository there is OCI. OCI has a test integration directory. That directory has all the things related to this. In the current setup, we have a main file which creates the main application to be tested. We can create a sub package there, which would be this Go proxy. And it will have its own Docker file to build the container image. And we can just wrap it, push it, use it.
Mm.
I can tell you in detail later. We have most of the
Cool.
tooling, just have to add to it. But maybe you can do it after the release because there's a lot to review and test.
Yeah, good point. We should probably decide this today, right? If we're gonna block the release on this or not.
No. I'm sure we're not blocking this. There are so many proxy in Flux which are not even tested. We're just manually testing and releasing.
Okay.
It's not a new thing. I don't think this needs to be plugged.
Okay. I'm more relieved.
We need similar integration tests in source controller itself. We have tests in package repositories, which are testing only the parts that are in package repositories. But source controller itself makes so many connections which go through proxy, but we don't have any tests for those things.
By the way, how would this specific test work? Because I was thinking that all this authentication is for OIDC, right? And should be running inside, like can't be running in CI, right? Should be running inside the actual clusters of the cloud providers.
Yeah, we have a GCP test, right? We have a GCP account, we create a GKE
Oh,
cluster, we run
mm,
everything there. We have an AWS account, we create an EKS cluster, we create an ECR instance, we push images to ECR, we make sure everything works, right?
mhm.
All we need to do is, so we already have tests for OCI operations. with Google artifact, whatever the
Registry.
the artifact registry, and with AWS ECR. So we actually have end-to-end tests for this,
Nice.
but we don't know if the proxy is actually working. So in order to test that,
Yeah.
we need to copy all these tests that we already have and rerun them using a sidecar proxy that sits
A
in
sidecar?
the same, a sidecar, yes, a container that has a proxy, I don't know, Nginx, whatever you want to put in there, Go proxy built by our own or whatever, right? And have some, and set the proxy in all the custom resources to use the sidecar and have the same, basically the same test, but with the sidecar there and the proxy setting. And if he can pull the artifact, then we assume, yes, our proxy code still works, right? Because, okay, you tell the problem, what we try to achieve with end-to-end test, you've already tested it, right? It works with a proxy. But tomorrow something happens in the GKE environment or the EKS environment. We don't know about it, right? So the only way to make sure our code still works or a new EKS version or a new GKE version and so on is to have this end-to-end tested, and every time we change something, these tests are running in package. Every time we make a change, we can spin up the GKE cluster, the AKS cluster, and so on. And we also have end-to-end tests, which are called conformance tests in the Flux 2 repository, where we test again all things together, all the controllers, not only OCI, but the controllers together with GKE, EKS. We used to test on AKS, but we no longer have an account. So we don't need to write anything from scratch. We need to figure out how to duplicate the current OCI tests with a proxy sidecar or a proxy pod or however you want to do it. What's easier,
Oh,
I'm
God.
guessing.
Yeah, it's just that I never thought about doing it with a sidecar. Like I was thinking about spinning up a pod and granting that pod the permissions. But yeah, I mean, the container should work as well. Actually, maybe simpler.
Should be simpler because the proxy will be local in the same
Yeah.
network, right? Because the sidecar runs in the pod network.
Mm-hmm.
So set the proxy to localhost 400 or whatever, right? And that's where the proxy is. You don't need to know the IP of the pod and to set the proxy to that IP. You don't need to
Yeah.
create a Kubernetes service, whatever. It's just a
Yeah.
sidecar there, so you can hardcode the
Much
port.
simpler. Yeah. Much less configuration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Okay, so we are not, wait a second. So to have some conclusion to this, we are not going to block the proxy pull request in image reflector and the one I wrote for source controller based on this end-to-end. This can come later. So the priority now is review the two pull requests for proxy, merge them, and second priority is the Git modification. So next week, I'm off to Open Source Summit all week. I'll not be around at all. And the week after, it's the Flux release. And we need to release source controller at least 5 days before the deadline. Because we need to release source controller, then update the source controller APIs, the other controllers, release them, and so on. Right? So we really need to get all the pull requests merged and source controller be ready for release by the end of next week. And next week I'm not on, so just a heads up.
Oh, going back to the proxy thing, if we are just running it in the same, like as a sidecar, why not just start the proxy server in the same process itself as a separate coroutine in a separate pod? That'll be even simpler. You have one binary which starts the proxy at a port and then continues to do rest of the testing. But for proxy, it will proxy through the port that's running the proxy. That's even
don't
simpler.
like-
You don't have to build anything, huh?
But so does that
But-
mean that the test like is not the actual binary of the controller, but rather a test binary
that's
that
what
has its own code?
in our integration test, we have a separate application that is not Flux.
Mm.
It's separate, it has its own main file. It just imports the libraries we use in Flux controllers and runs them. Checks if we can authenticate and list repositories or clone things. It's a separate
That
thing
should
also,
work.
and you can do whatever you want there.
That should work, I guess.
Yeah, but not in Flux too, right?
No, not in Flux too.
In package.
In package.
Yeah. Okay, in package you can do that, right?
In package and even in image reflector, I think. No, image reflector is separate. That's a controller. In package.
Yeah, in package you can do that, right? Import. I mean, what you did with building your own image and so on, we can do it with the main Go that runs the tests in package, right?
Mhm.
In case
So
of
But
really
image
I'm-
reflector.
Wait, but the main Go does not run in GK. It runs in the Linux VM in GitHub Action.
What are you talking? No, we build a test app image. We push the image to the registry in the environment we created. Then we create Kubernetes jobs, which create pods, which is running this application. You don't run it.
Okay.
It's all in the cluster, nothing in your computer. It has to be inside the cluster to do authentication.
Which already
Yes,
works,
I
right? We're
see.
just talking about
Which-
introducing proxy.
We have all these set up already.
Yeah, make Docker build and then push. Okay. Yeah, I see it now. Yeah, great. So
Even simpler.
we can actually, we can
For-
do it in package.
For controller tests, like testing image reflector, build the image reflector image during the test or before running the test and push the test image reflector image in the environment, test environment. And that's run in the cluster to test if it actually works. But in this situation, if you want to do proxy, you have to create a separate proxy pod or a sidecar to the image reflector or whatever.
Sorry, can you repeat the difference? The two situations?
When we are testing, when we are doing integration tests in a controller, we cannot add the proxy in the controller code.
Mhm.
In that case, we have to deploy the proxy separately as a sidecar or as a separate pod.
Mhm.
Maybe a separate pod would be better because if you do Flux 2 testing, where we are testing all the things, customization or source control, everything, customized, not relevant, I guess. We need one central proxy, which is used by source controller, image reflector, and anything else. You can say you can attach proxy to each of those pods, but maybe it's easier to just have a separate proxy which everybody uses. Or
Okay.
we can see later.
And
Don't need to
but that-
decide now.
Okay, but that's one thing. And what's the other thing that is different? Because first we were saying about introducing this proxy in the same process in main.go.
Oh,
But then we were talking about controllers and everything, so I want to
So
understand
when
what
you
are these
test
two
the
separate situations.
when you test the libraries in the package repositories, we have a separate test application. But when you want to test controllers,
Okay. So
then you
you're
cannot
saying
modify.
so the package repo with the main goal, we're just testing the packages, nothing else, just
Right,
their
right.
functionality,
Mhm.
like isolated each
Mhm.
package individually, I guess.
Mhm.
I see. Okay. And then an actual full end-to-end test would involve controllers, and in that case, we would need a separate image and a proxy pod for all the controllers. I see. Okay. Cool.
So talk about Git.
Yes.
I was reviewing it yesterday, left some comments, and I think code looks okay. There's very minimal change in source controller. Still, I'll think more today if we can do anything more in source controller. It's just adding a few lines to the setup path or something. There's a function where we add provider specific details in the Git auth we create based on the provider field in the Git repository spec. And I suggest how to test that. We cannot test running the whole reconciliation because it'll try to connect to Azure. So just test that setup auth function, ignoring everything else. I think that should be enough. I'll try to
Yes.
think if there's anything else we
I
need to
think
test.
it's enough. We have this kind of tests before, right? When we just set up the controller manager and then we look at the options. Oh, but she already added a proxy, a test for this.
Until yesterday, though, I commented maybe she had a test. There's no
Yeah,
test.
it is Git repository controller test, get auth options, test Git repository reconciler, get auth options. Because we had this kind of test for checkout for other things. So she added one after your comment, and your comment is now marked as done.
But it's slightly different from how we were doing tests for the checkout strategy, and there are other things. In those cases, we were calling the reconcile source function completely, which almost does everything. In this case, we cannot make an external connection. So
Yeah.
it's different from those existing tests. I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think too. It's fine. Okay, so let's merge the package implementation 7, 8, 9.
I'll do a full manual testing first, and then I'll approve it. I want to build source
Okay.
controller with the package changes and deploy it in a cluster and test and try to break it and see what happens, how the errors look when it fails.
Cool.
Maybe we'll find something we need to change, maybe the error messages or something, and then I'll approve it.
Okay, after you approve it, I will merge it and then I will I'll do another pull request on top of this because we need to do release, update go mode in dependencies, merge that and do another release. And only then we can rebase properly source controller because this new auth package introduces yet another staging in the release pipeline of package because Git depends on auth. The auth has to be tagged. Then you have to go in package. You have again bump the version in Git, merge that pull request, then release go Git, then do the same for Git. So it complicates stuff. Now it's 3 waves, these 3 stages to release Git properly. Do not have any problems with if someone does, for example, like we do, or Dependabot does, get package Git. We want package Git to have in Go mode all the versions, all the latest version of auth and the latest version of GoGit, right? So then we don't have to go again over Dependabot and manually bump those and so on. So for this to work, I have to do this in multiple stages. And after I have the pull request for this, we merge it, we tag it, we can update source controller. Before we merge source controller, we have to merge the integration test in package. Also, the integration test has to be rebased and updated after I release the packages. It shouldn't depend on v00.
Integration test should be running on the main branch, right?
It runs on the main because we have a rewrite. I'm talking about the correctness of the Go mode. Yeah, so if you go in OCI test integration, Go mode, you'll see package auth v00000. I don't want to have this merged in main like this. This has to have a replace. We never depend on everything that's in package and uses another package has to have a replace with the local file, not using require. Anyway, we don't need to speak about this. I'll just after I'm going to merge and release those, I'm going to make here comments on what needs to be changed. Right, because the tests are now importing the dipty's forks. So we can't merge this with forks. We need to release them, and then she has to go again on this pull request, remove the replace for the forks, add the replace to package local, and put the right version in Go mode. And of course, the same for source controller, because source controller now has replace for dipty's forks. Anyway, I'm going to wait for you to test it with dipty's forks. So you'll basically deploy source controller from that pull request that she made that replaces all the packages with her forks, which contain the latest version of the code. Once you confirm that that's fine and working, only then I'll do this staging release of packages. Okay, anything else?
I'm still thinking, can we simplify this? Because auth adds more dependency on how we build things. So nothing, I will think it. Image automation. I think the PI is not there yet. We'll have separate docs for image automation Azure DevOps setup as well, right? Or
Yes.
maybe this similar same docs that have in source controller now. Similarly in image automation.
But yeah, you need to set up workload identity also for image automation. You can't just set it up on source control and expect for image automation to work. So the docs are similar. No, the docs are how you set up workload identity is the same. The example in image automation controller should be about patching the image automation service and deployment, right? So we can't point to source controller. She needs to create new docs for image automation. The only difference is that there is no provider Azure in the image automation API that comes from source controller. So there we need to link to the source controller docs. For this to work, the Git repo has to have the provider set up to Azure and link to the source controller provider Azure documentation, and also add there and now set up workload identity. And here are the patches and how you can do it.
I'm just thinking if there is anything that needs to be discussed in the Go Git code. Maybe not.
Image automation has some logic around pushing back to creating a branch, all that stuff. But I really hope it reuses the Git client from package Git and it doesn't do its own stuff. So it should just work.
I don't remember doing anything new. Just reusing our client.
Yeah, at some point we had a bunch of duplicated code, but we got rid of those. Git. So there is a Git Go in image automation. Bigger. Yeah, so it's just a tiny wrapper over our Git client. There is get auth option, git new auth option, the option for option. Yeah, so it's fine. Should be fine. Very little change here where we look up the provider and we pass it on to the client. Where the proxies, the auth options, it's here. It should be minimal changes. There is no actual code that does Git things. Everything is with the client. So that's should be easy. It's more about documentation.
One thing in the Go Git code right now, because it's just Azure, we set the beer token. The existing code that's pushed in the pull request has the switch statement which checks which provider you're running, and based on that creates a Azure option or populates the Azure option in the auth options, and then calls get credential. And at the end, it sets the beer token with the what's this called? Provider creds we received. I was thinking when we have, maybe need not think now, but when we have other providers which needs username and password, in their case, this beer token would be empty. Would it be okay to set all three of these, irrespective of which provider you are using? So whatever you get, the provider credential you receive, which contains username, password, and beer token. And at the end, we just set all three of them. Based on the provider, the correct one would be not empty and it'll just work.
Oh, because so if you use the GitHub app, you
your username and
have to
password.
place the token in the password.
Mhm.
Right.
For most, even for GCP, it's username and password. I think it's safe. You're just setting an empty bearer token. Should not matter.
Yeah.
It's similar to some Git code where we set tag, branch, and everything, but only one of them would be set, have actual value, and will be applicable.
Yeah. Yeah, also the username has some default value, right?
Huh.
Like Git, because
Huh.
GitHub and GitLab, I know for sure they ignore the username when a bearer token is passed as the password. But you have to set it because otherwise other things fail. But you can set it to any kind of string and it gets ignored. But you have to set it. And I think in the Git package we have the default set there to Git or whatever. Flux.
In GCP, I think there's a specific username that you need to use.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe until we get to implement GCP, they deprecate their Git.
They did, right? They have a new one. Some
Oh, they have a
secure
new one. They
source
already
code.
did, and they have replaced it. Right. So no chance that will stick for another year or two until they kill it for good. You know that website killed by Google with all the things that they have. Okay, we are on time. Anything else?
There is one more section. Kingdom, you have some.
Yeah,
headlines?
just a really small update. The headlamp Flux plugin is still work in progress. I heard from Ashu earlier this week that there is some progress, so I should redeploy it, and I'm going to do that. And I will set up a pipeline so that we have the latest version deployed, and we can keep tabs on it until it's released, at least.
Yeah, I made some comments on that issue. I haven't run anything yet, but other people that have run it, they have put print screens there, and I figured out what's wrong. He made a bunch of changes. So now, for example, we should have revision displayed for all ham releases, which before was broken, and some other things. But yeah, the week after the next, I really want to run this on my own cluster and see how it goes.
Cool. Yeah.
Anyway, if you get to test it and if you find anything wrong, write on that issue, not on the pull request, or on the I don't remember where is that large discussion. I think it's the issue where people have put a bunch of print screens.
There's init Flux plugin number 75 is where there's a
Yeah.
like
Init Flux plugin. That's the one, right? So put print screens there, report issues, and I'll when I get back, I'll take a look. And I also want to run it and do one more review of all the code that's in there. Basically, it's all about, having the right JSON path to Flux statuses. And because we no longer have a status object that behaves the same for all custom resources, it creates a lot of work for these people. So yeah, it is what it is. We didn't thought too much of users from this perspective, and we made our
Okay,
life
it's not
very
up to
hard.
us. It's up to them to use KStatus client. It's not up to us.
There is no KStatus client in JavaScript, and it's not
Create
about that.
it.
It's about
Create it. It's fine.
it's not only about KStatus. It's a bunch of stuff. For example, how you determine the revision, right, is different all over the place. It's not. It used to be the same. It's not. How you determine the readiness status. There is also health status, upgrade status. There are a bunch of stuff. So I don't expect anyone to understand the logic that we have. So we need to guide them to the right queries.
I still feel it's not Flux specific. It's very generic. In the Kubernetes API, there's a page, right? There they explicitly say this is how we work. Nothing means everything is fine. The only unique thing in Flux API status is we set some -1 for the initial version, which I still don't understand. I think 0 is enough. Why do we set -1? But we cannot change that now.
We're raising the bar for downstream consumers of the API. They have to understand Kubernetes fully, which is plus and minus.
Yeah, the advantage in this case with Headlamp is the fact that they already have a bunch of logic for Kubernetes deployments, for jobs, so they already have UIs that, correctly tell you what's happening with the Kubernetes deployment, right? Now it's more about being able to do the same stuff for a Flux object and then be able to link from the Flux object to all the things that Flux manages and link to the deployment view that they have, which is fine, to the jobs, all the other things, right? And this is yet a big divergence in the fact that in the Flux customization status, we have this inventory where you just look at the Flux customization object in the status and you know everything that's managed by Flux through that object, right? There is a list where it tells you the name, the namespace, the kind, the API version, everything. So you can easily parse that and create a link to a deployment, to a job, to whatever. Now for a Helm release, we don't have that. We don't have anything there. We have the chart version. And there is a bunch of logic how you get from the chart version to the Helm storage, which is a secret. Okay, then you figure out, okay, I have to query the secret. And surprise, the secret has a tarball inside. So you have to get the base 64. You have to assume it's a tarball. You have to untar it. Then is a JSON, which is very specific to Helm. And there you have all the things that are in etcd duplicated in all the deployments, all the secrets are again in this Helm storage because this is how Helm is designed. And once you get those, you can still figure out where are these objects deployed because the Helm storage does not specify the namespace.
Mhm.
Right? So you need, I wrote all this logic in Go. It's not complicated. It's, 100 lines of code. But it's impossible to do it in JavaScript. So I suggested to them.
I don't know that it's impossible. I think we did it in the VS Code extension. I have to check, but I'm pretty sure it's possible. Just
No,
not
I think also
straightforward at all.
for VS Code, we did another thing that I also suggested to them. Is like everything that's managed by Flux has two labels. The Flux API customized.toolkit.fluxity.io or helm.toolkit.fluxity.io /name/namespace. So there are two labels. And if you find an object with these two labels, you know exactly how Flux manages that object. That's the magic behind the Flux trace command. So Headlamp already has access to everything that's running in the cluster because they display all the things, right? So they can query their data set based on the Helm release name and namespace, and they'll have all the objects. They don't need to parse. They don't need to extract things from the secret, do all that stuff because they have all the objects out there, right? So they can do get all objects with this label selector. And here are all the things that Flux manages through Helm. Right? So I did that suggestion and yeah, hopefully they can figure out how to do it. If not, then we need to write down how to do this secret extraction, untarring, all the stuff that Helm does to discover the objects. But I hope the labels are enough and they can easily do it.
Before we end the meeting, since you will not be here next week, you'll not be here. I have some questions, maybe you can spend 5 minutes. I was thinking about the Flux CLI and Azure thing. Like how, last week we were talking about how do we automate it, how will the user use so ORDC git login or git auth. So I was checking our Bootstrap command. We don't have the cloud provider specific subcommand. It's GitHub, GitLab, Git and just Git. We need a very specific subcommand, right, for support cloud provider because it's everything to do with Azure and it's not generic. It cannot apply the same to GCP. So to address this Bootstrap, we need to create a subcommand called Flux Bootstrap Azure, and then maybe accept the person access token to do the initial setup, and then create the objects with the workload entity labels. And then after setting up, you can tell the user you can delete the person access token and it'll continue to work.
No, I have a different idea.
How do
we add the provider flag like we did for OCI, for Flux push OCI, push artifact, pull artifact, all artifact commands. Have a provider field. And when you specify the provider,
for the generic git subcommand.
Yes.
Okay.
So for the generic git subcommand, you add -- provider Azure.
Mm-hmm.
We don't change anything in the code. We assume your machine is able to clone the repo through a SSH agent, through a path, through whatever you want. We don't care. If you want to bootstrap Flux, you have to have Git access from your local machine.
There is one prerequisite that repository needs to exist before.
Of course. Yes, we are not going to create it. Because
but in case of GitHub, GitLab, we create the repository, right?
Yeah.
But in this case, we will not.
No. And why? Because
that simplifies it. We don't need persons.
Yeah. We don't need to create. We don't need to do anything. What we need to do is add the provider field. If that's one is set, we set the provider in the Git definition, in the generated Git repository. And people have to do, like for all OEDC stuff, they have to have the repo ready. It has to exist. It has to have the Flux patches in there with your labels, account ID, whatever. And you run git -- provider Azure. And the only thing we do is we set in the Git repository, instead of the secret ref, we set provider to whatever string is there. And of course, we can validate the string in the CLI. This changes very little the documentation we currently have for Azure. So we have now in Azure how you do it with SSH, how you do it with a path, and we'll use the same command, Flux bootstrap git, how you do it with OEDC. The requirement stays the same. Your local machine should be able to clone the repo and push to the repo, while to the OEDC identity, to the workload identity, maybe you want only read-only access. Maybe you don't use image automation, right? So we don't force you to give more permissions to workload identity more than you wish. If you want it read-only, it will work. But the idea is from the machine you are running the Flux command, you have to have pull and push access. How you do that? Maybe through SSH, maybe through HTTPS. But we don't take that into consideration. The string that you give us will always set HTTPS in the generated Git repository because OEDC provider only works over HTTPS. So here I think is the challenge to this. Besides the provider, which is very simple to implement and have that patch, the challenge is parsing the URL. If we find SSH here, in the URL is SSH. Let's say they use an SSH agent. We need to figure out how to turn it into an HTTPS URL. And I think here is the challenge. Dipti can help. She knows maybe there are some rules because the URLs could be very different, right? Maybe it can't even work. Maybe SSH, I don't know. It's so different that you can't determine the HTTPS address, and maybe we need to add another flag. Hopefully not.
I think
Hopefully
it's simple. No, should be fine.
Yeah, but as you said, you know, it's gov addresses. There are all sorts of things. But yeah, it's here because it's just the protocol. We should be able to parse the URL, extract the port, throw away the port from the SSH, and just flip the protocol to HTTPS, and that's it. Right? It should, in theory, it should work. The only case when it doesn't work is when you have a dedicated subdomain or a dedicated domain for SSH. If that's possible, then yeah, we already have a flag called host, and we can use that. And that flag, the host flag for Bootstrap Git, it's especially we had to add that for GitLab, where a lot of people have this use case for GitLab. The HTTPS is on one domain or subdomain, SSH is on a different subdomain. And then we have this -- SSH host, where we let people specify the alternative domain, right? So in theory, we have all the flags in place. All we need to do is add provider and write some logic around the URL and not introduce a new Azure command or whatever. I think that's the easiest thing is doing the Git stuff. And why I like it more than the other option is because for a full command, you need to deal with creating the repo, setting up permissions. That means the identity has to have all those permissions as well. And that's where you get in a tricky part around security, right? Maybe Flux on the cluster should not be able to create repos or delete repos or mess up their security and stuff like that.
So this existing subcommands, GitLab, GitHub, do they do anything extra, like generating a deployment key or anything?
Yeah, they do a bunch of stuff. They use Go Git provider and they actually talk to the API of the provider. They talk to the GitHub API, GitLab API, Bitbucket API. The Git command, Bootstrap Git, it's pure Git protocol. It doesn't do anything, right? Specific to a provider.
If you already have a repository, do they do anything more?
Yes. Well, it depends. So if you have a GitHub repository and you want to bootstrap with the GitHub command for SSH, we generate a deploy key, a unique deploy key, and we talk to the GitHub API to set up the deploy key there, because GitHub does not accept the reusage of deploy keys. Once you set up a deploy key, you can't reuse it anywhere, right? So every time you bootstrap a new cluster, you have to set up a new deploy key. And we talk to the GitHub API to upload the deploy key, which is a different set of permissions, has nothing to do with Git. This is a GitHub thing. GitLab has the
Something
same stuff.
interesting, like, sorry, something interesting that I noticed recently about this command you're talking about is that now the deploy key is associated with the personal access token, right? In the
It
past,
always was. No, it always was.
it always was?
Yes. And if the personal access token expires, the deploy key expires. This is all
It,
documented in
it
the
has
Flux
always
docs.
been like that? I thought it
Yes.
wasn't like that in the past. Wow.
It always has been.
Okay.
Or at least, I don't know, in the last 10 years, 15 years, I
Okay.
don't know. Of course, if you upload the deploy key through the UI or through the API, you do it through an identity, and it's associated to that identity and to that token, right? That's why when someone leaves a GitHub organization, if you use personal access token and you haven't created a Flux user like we recommend in our docs, and you use an actual person in your org and you kick the person out of the org, boom, all the deploy keys are invalidated. And this is what we are trying to solve with GitHub app, right? Is give people the option, okay, if you don't want to pay one user, so in GitHub and GitLab, you pay, I don't know GitLab, but GitHub, you pay each user, I don't know, $10, $12 per year or something like that, right? So it's a cost to create this Flux user. Now, if we implement GitHub app, the GitHub app has no cost. You can create how many apps you want in your organization. You give them proper rights over whatever repos you want, and then Flux can use the GitHub app identity, and that's not tied to a particular person in your organization, which can leave and be very impactful. So that's the main reason we are trying to get the GitHub app in, because it's cheaper and helps organizations not depend on a particular person or deal with this user. You need to set two-factor authentication for it and a bunch of stuff, right? That comes with having a new user in your organization. And GitLab has the same concept. I don't know if it's called an app or whatever it is, but it works quite the same.
And it doesn't have multi-factor authentication, right? Like a user.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's specific for this, I don't know, machine service accounts, right?
Use cases, right? Yeah.
What GitLab lacks, in my opinion, is this particular use case where you have a service account, like, I don't know, GCP, all the clouds have that concept where it's not a person behind it, it's a automation, it's a daemon, it's a long running task or whatever. But GitLab apps are similar to that, and that's what we should be using for Flux as well.
End the meeting.
Yeah, so I'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay. Bye.
Cool.
Nice seeing you guys.
I'll
Bye.
see you. Bye.
Have a great day.
Thank you.